But the data that we're putting in our CRM is inaccurate, everything afterwards is going to be wrong too. So that really hit home, where it was the first time where I had a CEO who was not as concerned about generating MQLs at the beginning or MQAs. It was about the data quality that was going in and making sure that everything was accurate. And then after that, everything was measurable. So we would bring in analytics tools to measure website performance, email engagement, and try to tie them in. There's a lot that I've started to do with AI. I mean, it can help from anything from, it won't write your strategy for go-to-market, but it can help make it more succinct. You can use it to bounce ideas off of because it's analyzing a whole lot more data than we have access to and giving you some ideas based off of that. I think that's probably more appropriate for smaller businesses that are just starting out, where you can get an assist from AI to help create your marketing plan with the help of knowledgeable people who can tell you if it's the right move or not. Where I am with AI, it's more about analyzing data that would otherwise take me several hours or several days, and it can come back with analysis that, sometimes it's not accurate. Sometimes you have to go through everything and double check to make sure it's giving you back the right information, but it can come back with some pretty incredible insights that you weren't otherwise aware of after it looks at that data. There's still something to be said for that human element, that gut instinct too, that you have a feeling that something will resonate where AI wouldn't have that feeling. In B2B sales, I still think it comes down to messaging. If you could have the right solution for a prospect, but if your messaging is off and you say the wrong thing, you quickly lose them and they go to a competitor.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the OnBase Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today I'm very excited to be with Craig Abramson from Workday to talk about precision targeting with data-driven account-based strategies. Craig, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Looking forward to it.
I'd love for you to tell everyone a little bit about your journey. What led you to what you're doing today? What are some of your highlights?
Yeah, I think my journey has somehow I found myself in this niche of software marketing. Wasn't intentional, but I started off as a marketing writer at this company called SyncSort, which was the leading sorting software at the time. I think that experience really helped kickstart every part of my career, having that background in writing and just being able to, write anything from marketing strategies to case studies to white papers, all that stuff. That really helped. But that kind of pushed me into software without realizing it. And as my career progressed and I started to jump into different roles to leading marketing at some of these other startups, pulling back on that experience and then being at these startups where you're able to really get your hands dirty on everything and quickly pivot and innovate as quickly as you can, based off of whether you have a budget or not, doing bootstrapping. That kind of experience, has been great and helped me build a whole tool set that I probably wouldn't have otherwise have been able to acquire. That led me to Zimit, which at the time was a services configure price quote solution. And I was given a 3-year ramp up to build out my marketing team. And within 10 months, I got the call from my CEO saying, hey, guess what? We just got acquired by Workday. I couldn't tell you that beforehand because it's a public company. And now you're on the Workday team. And that's how I ended up at Workday about 4 years ago.
Outstanding. I love that. So you've done the same journey I have, where you'll be at a small company and you have your hands in everything, and then you get acquired by a massive organization and you have to feel around, find your way. So that's actually a fun experience. It's a little scary, but great to hear that. I'd love, you talked about getting your hands dirty, quick innovations, pivots, account-based. That's what I want to dive into here. So most of us who have been in marketing, especially in SaaS and software companies, we have lived and the lead to MQL to SQL to opt to close one. We've lived in that funnel. We might have had different things it was called, but we've always tried to drive MQLs or SQLs. And then along came account based to say, hey, in addition to the massive quantities of leads that we're trying to keep in the funnel and not have any leaky stages in the journey, let's figure out how to spend more time and money with the most important accounts and then try to do that at scale. So I'd love to know what drew you to account based and how have you changed your perspective on it over time with the impact that you've seen?
Yeah, I think, like I said about the innovation at the startups, it's like I would plan a strategy. I would build the marketing plan for a year, knowing that within 3 months we'll completely pivot and move away from that plan because we've latched on to something that worked, or something has come up, innovation or whatever that we realize we have to start focusing on. So years ago, working at an SAP Business One reseller, we had done a lot of research and realized that, hey, you know what? Most of the small businesses that we're targeting are QuickBooks users. So let's start focusing on, companies within this revenue range that are still on QuickBooks. So we would buy the list whether they were accurate or not, and start running more targeted programs to the business owner, because most likely they didn't have a gatekeeper. So we were looking at CEOs up to, maybe 25 million in revenue at the time. And we started to shape our program around all of the pain points that these small business owners are experiencing. And it really struck a nerve. Started to notice that it started to have an impact on the number of leads that we were generating, being really targeted with that. And then that kind of carried over into the next couple of startups that I was at. I was at one where we were focused on compliance software, and we looked at companies that had material weaknesses and said, that's a sweet spot because they have to now show that they're doing something to address these material weaknesses. And we started running campaigns towards them, and all the email nurture programs that I run, I've always run them from my own email address. So anything coming out from Marketo or anything, it comes back directly to me so that I can see responses. Are we driving engagement? Are people coming back with questions? Are they angry that we sent them this email? Do they want to unsubscribe? Anything, getting that feedback. So with this program, we targeted one company that the person responded back within 2 minutes of the email blast going out. And she's just started qualifying herself. And this is, a large enterprise. I don't want to say the company, but well-known, 250 million plus company. She came back and qualified herself to me over email, explaining that they have to do something. They have to show to the regulators that they're doing something. And, we went back and forth a little bit. I turned it over to sales, and our typical sales cycle was 6 to 9 months. That one closed in 3 months. And it was all just because we knew these accounts were having problems. We addressed it in our email, hitting the pain points. And then that really just carried over into seeing the engagement and overall performance of those campaigns. We're still running the general campaigns to our addressable market, but the impact was really coming when we started to focus on the smaller number of accounts that all had similar issues.
I love that. I was trying to keep a straight face when you said that all the email replies come to you. We're sourcing data horror stories right now. I'm going to encourage you to submit your worst story there when we finish this episode. But I, I think about all the data we have access to, good and bad, and we know that for a lot of how we target, it could be garbage in, garbage out if we don't have incredible data. What are some of the challenges that you've seen organizations, especially those doing this at scale, like you are? What are the challenges that they face in leveraging the data to make account-based strategies effective, both in the smaller companies, but also massive companies? And you've lived that literally at Workday, like company you were at before, then into Workday doing the same thing similar?
Yeah, I can say that fortunately for being at Workday, there are whole teams involved in the data quality issues, where that I had to previously address at startups, and it's gotten better, the data quality that we're seeing overall, just because of solutions like Zoom Info, where we started using that at where pulling in the titles and roles at our addressable market and seeing that the bounce rate of those was pretty low. We were talking about like a 3% bounce rate, where previously when we were doing list purchases, you're looking at 20-30% bounce rates. But then being able to see that data flow, we target this controller at this company where we think they have certain pain points. And then all of a sudden we start tracking that data to see, we sent this email, they clicked on a link. Now they started visiting our website. They started to come back to our website. Now they downloaded content, and now we invite them to a webinar. Now they're at the webinar and we're like, all right, now this account is actively engaged, and here's who, the SDR should be talking to. At Workday, a lot of that is more automated now. But still, we're focused on the data that we're getting in through, we use Demandbase. So we're setting up scoring models to take a look at all the different types of data that are coming in, whether it's through our website or Salesforce, to figure out which accounts we should be actively engaging with on our ABX team. So we're looking at engagement minutes, where is someone responding to our emails? Are they visiting the website? Are they showing intent signals for topics that would be relevant to our solutions? So it was a lot harder to keep that data clean at the startups, where you're responsible for, garbage in, garbage out. Whereas at Workday, don't have to worry about it as much, which which is pretty nice not to have that responsibility.
Yeah, totally. And you hit on the example previously, the email response, 250 million plus company, closed in 3 months instead of the 6 to 9. I'd love to understand your thoughts on timing. We've always said, since you and I were first in SaaS, right message, right time, right place, like all the things, right person, all the rights that we've said. Very rarely is that delivered upon. But when you strike timing, you see the examples like the email response and what happened there. How do you think about timing and the critical role that it plays in account base and helping to optimize when to engage with the right person?
Yeah, I mean, with our pipeline predicts models and Demandbase, we're able to get a better idea based off of the scoring models. But before having a solution like that really gives us that insight. Like when I was at Zimit, uh, we were busy trying to make sure we had the most accurate data coming in. But we were launching a solution in an area that didn't really have one focused on services companies. So there were configure price quote solutions, but they weren't custom made for services. So that's the niche that we were focused on. And the game changer for me came when we started to pull intent data that was given to us from Zoom Info. So that intent, I started to look at companies in our addressable market that are showing intent for configure price quote solutions, and let's pull the contacts that we would target at those accounts and run them through a little nurture, where we're pushing them to webinars based off of some pain points. And at the time, so I was the first marketing director brought in. So we were still in startup mode, obviously. The pipeline was almost entirely sales driven at that point. But then, based off of just using that intent data, those signals, we were able to bring these accounts in and flip the pipeline pretty quickly. Within 3 months, it became 56% was marketing driven now. So we really started to notice an impact, and the sales reps were getting pretty excited about it. And then we were acquired. So we started to build up a lot of momentum.
It's always the best when that happens, right? We got it figured out, and then it's a great milestone to be acquired, but it is a little like we've got this. Um, so Craig, you talked about a lot of different teams and the size and scope of an organization like Workday. I'm curious, do account-based strategies align with all the other go-to-market strategies? So you have multiple teams, lots of folks doing different things, but if you think about the data usage and how you achieve measurable results, how does account-based fit in with everything else?
Yeah. So uh, someone on our team came up, I think it was Matthew Miller, who came up with an example of how we're a little different from ABM and the demand gen overall engine, where on the demand gen side, we're focused on hitting everyone. So we're the big box retailer, Walmart, trying to bring in as many people as possible. On the ABX side, where we're focused on targeting the top 15% of accounts based off of the model scores, what we call our FHIR scores, uh, that are showing the accounts that are most likely in market for a specific solution. And our goal is to reach the buying committee members for those accounts. And then the ABM team, which is focused on the one-to-one marketing, where it could be based off of likelihood of an account becoming a prospect becoming a customer, or it could be nominated by an account executive. But they're really focused on, they're like the bespoke clothier who's focused on that white glove treatment, whereas ABX is more the personal shopper who you walk into the clothing store and they'll help you pick things out that they think are right for you, and then they go on to the next customer.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And all the different teams working together, sharing the data, sharing the learnings. For the folks who don't have the big team, making sure that it's all the best data and that everyone is tapping into it in the best ways, how can businesses ensure that their data models are accurate and actionable for reaching the right accounts and preferably at the right time, too?
Yeah. Well, I think um, what I said earlier, garbage in, garbage out. I had been at companies where we were purchasing lists of accounts and contacts at those accounts, and for the most part, they were junk. Uh, but it's also making sure that if you are putting in an account in your addressable market, is it really an account that you want to be targeting? When I was at, excuse me, when I was at Zimit, it was my CEO who I had just uploaded 2,000 contacts at accounts that, he was personally going through the accounts to determine which ones were in the addressable market. So I pulled in using Zoom Info the roles that we were going after, and he immediately saw one that was the wrong role that somehow got put into our CRM and was like, look, stop everything you're doing. I don't care about generating leads right now. If the data that we're putting in our CRM is inaccurate, everything afterwards is going to be wrong too. So that really hit home, where it was the first time where I had a CEO who was not as concerned about generating MQLs at the beginning or MQAs. It was about the data quality that was going in and making sure that everything was accurate. And then after that, everything was measurable. So we would bring in analytics tools to, measure website performance, email engagement, and try to tie them in. We didn't have a tool like Demandbase where we could automate the scoring of that, and didn't have the budget to bring in something like that. But it was something where I would then have to dig in and try to figure out, well, all right, these accounts are actively engaging with us. Here's how they're doing it, and then pass that off to be followed up by our SDR team or our AEs if we didn't have an SDR team.
And one thing I love about your team, we were talking about this before we hit record. I think you have found that healthy balance of personalization and relevance, but also scale. And I'd love to get your advice for organizations struggling to find that balance. We typically see that sometimes companies go too far in on personalization and then it's too few accounts, which can be amazing on the right team. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where if you're too scaled, you're really not personalized, and that's more targeted demand gen than account based anyway. What advice do you have to find that perfect point in the middle?
Well, I think looking at some of the programs that I've run previously, we used a lot more one to many type programs where we cut out the templates and made it look like it was an Outlook email and made it look like it was one to one, even though it was one to many, and actually started getting a lot more feedback on those emails. Uh, there were people who would respond back to something like a webinar invite and say, "Oh, this sounds interesting, but I'm not able to make it." And then, I could reply back and say, "Oh, we'll send it to you on demand." Or they'll just come back and say, uh, "I'm not in the right role. I'm a controller, but I'm an air traffic controller, not a financial controller." Some quirks like that with the data that comes out.
Oh,
We would get the instant feedback on some of these programs, and some of the programs, I remember running a FUD program that we talked about a missing PO just to kind of hit home the idea that your processes um, can be improved through automation, and you're panicked about receiving an email like this, but you don't have to be, because if you use our solution, you don't have to worry about it. And I remember one CEO responded back pretty angry about that email. And I was like, I would have never gotten that feedback otherwise. And after that, we didn't do those type of FUD campaigns again because we were getting the instant feedback. But at
yeah.
Workday, it's something where on the ABX side, we made personalized based off of your role or the industry that you're in, but we're trying to drive engagement with the buying committee members and then either pass them off where they MQL and go into the SDRs for follow up, or it goes into an email nurture based off of where we think they are in their buyer's journey. And that email nurture is coming through a different team where it's just trying to kind of figure out where they fit in that buyer's journey and give them the right content at the right time. So it takes them a little bit further. And then if they come to certain pages on the website, then all of a sudden it's, they're getting more personalized messages. And then if they engage with, a chatbot through us, then all of a sudden it sounds even more one-to-one. So it depends on which channel they're being passed off to for our programs. They'll receive more or less personalization.
Awesome. I have one more question for you, Craig, before we jump into the lightning round. So this is where I should probably put in sound effects like pew pew pew, something like that when we get there. Fireworks. I don't know. We don't do that, but it would be awesome. I can see it. Like we'll just have pyrotechnics in my office. That'd be great. The question before we get to that, though, it's already happening, but how do you think AI is going to change account-based go-to-market strategies?
There's a lot that I've started to do with AI. I mean, it can help from anything from, it won't write your strategy for go to market, but it can help make it more succinct. Uh, you can use it to bounce ideas off of because it's analyzing a whole lot more data than we have access to, and giving you some ideas based off of that. I think that's probably more appropriate for smaller businesses that are just starting out, where you can get an assist from AI to help create your marketing plan with the help of knowledgeable people who can tell you if it's the right move or not. Where I am with AI, it's more about analyzing data that would otherwise take me several hours or several days, where I can feed it into something like Gemini, and it can come back with analysis that, sometimes it's not accurate. Sometimes you have to go through everything and double check to make sure it's giving you back the right information. But um, it can come back with some pretty incredible insights that you weren't otherwise aware of after it looks at that data. Uh, so I think it can assist in various steps throughout the process as you get bigger, but there's still something to be said for that human element, that gut instinct too, that you have a feeling that something will resonate where AI wouldn't have that feeling.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly stated. I think you need that direction to poke at and be curious, and then it can certainly help with the insights and what to do and making that easier, more efficient, more automated. Great response there. This is the part where we transition into some quick hitters. So these are really fast. You don't have to give us a long answer on these. And the challenge of this question is that you can only say one thing. But the question is, what is the single biggest challenge in B2B sales today?
In B2B sales,
Yes. So if you think of the seller, all the challenges they have.
I still think it comes down to messaging. If you could have the right solution for a prospect, but if your messaging is off and you say the wrong thing, you quickly lose them and they go to a competitor.
Yeah.
I actually had that experience at after a QBR. I know you said one thing. I'm killing the
No,
lightning
this
now,
is
but
perfect.
I was at a QBR, and one of the things our CRO was talking about was all these prospects where we ran use cases for them. We showed them how much our solution could help, but in the end, they didn't move forward with us. We did all right in that QBR, but as I'm sitting there, it just hit me. Our messaging is way off, and that's the problem. And as we're going through the QBR, I was creating a whole new deck on how we're missing the mark with messaging and what we should be focused on, and presented that to the team afterwards. But it was kind of like something like that, where it hits home, where how much an impact the wrong messaging or the right messaging can have on sales.
Totally. I mean, you and I aren't even opening it if it doesn't have the right hook. So it starts at the very beginning. Great stuff there. What about your favorite tools or technology that you're using? You've hit on a few, but what are some of the tech recommendations you'd make for our listeners?
Yeah, I think it's different depending on what stage your company is at. I mean, in the beginning, if you're a startup, it's hard to be able to bring in these more expensive tool sets, where instead of using something like Marketo, you'd be using Constant Contact instead. And instead of using something like Demandbase, where you're able to analyze all the data of a prospect that's engaging with your company or engaging with intent, you might use something like Zoom Info. I've been fortunate enough to grow with startups where I've been able to pull out something like Constant Contact and then put in HubSpot and then pull that out and put in Marketo, and then tie that all in and make the integration with Salesforce to see that flow of data going from your marketing automation tool to your enterprise CRM solution, and seeing the impact, and then continuing to grow and figuring out the best ways to integrate these new solutions so that we're getting the most out of that data. But in the end, it was I had several sales cycles at those startups for Demandbase, especially when it was just the ad platform, but was never able to move forward. But I mean, this is the core solution on our ABX team, and being able to uh, see all the data that we're able to get out of this and target the right accounts, and seeing the impact of targeting those right accounts. I mean, I know this is a demand-based podcast, but unsolicited, I'm saying what a fantastic solution it is for us to be able to pull all this data and then use it for our own programs.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for that. The next one, we're generous on this one, not just because you said Demandbase on the previous one, but we call it good reads. It could be book, blog, newsletter, podcast, video. What are the favorite content sources you're consuming today?
With the way there's all this targeting that's done, just going on LinkedIn and the amount of marketing articles and white papers and resources that are put in front of you have been great. A lot of it is spot on with what I'm reading. If you wanted to narrow it down into some that I read more often, or like a Neil Patel blog or the Martech blog, things like that. And then some of the vendors, whether we use them or not, some of these marketing vendors, Demandbase, HubSpot, Marketo, they have this pretty innovative ideas and content that comes out to discuss. And on our ABX team, one of our members, Matthew Miller, that I think you've had on, is always talking about the latest content that he's read and sharing it. So it's combination of what's kind of being put in my feed and LinkedIn and social media, as well as what I look at and what others recommend.
Outstanding. And you nailed people at the same time. So you gave us the 2-for-1. Nice job there. Last question, most important one, Craig. How can everyone get in touch with you after this episode?
Yeah, I think the easiest way would be through LinkedIn. The address is Craig N. Abramson when you're looking on LinkedIn, and for Neil. That's probably the best way. I know, being in marketing, that if I gave my work email, all of a sudden I would be inundated with sales teams trying to sell Workday. So best approach is LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thanks so much for joining us. It was really helpful. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.